Also, I forgot to add for my 1760 router, there wasn't any DSPs. So the DSPs for this model router come in the form of what is called a PVDM chip that you install on the board itself. Alright, so I did get a chip, I did install it, and this would allow me to then make calls from my analog to my IP phones, and from IP phones to my to do that conversion of signal for you. This contains your DSPs, or digital signal processor. I think that's much of the correct spelling or abbreviation. So so then I have this on my 1760, but it didn't support the IP communicator because it needs a later version. So I'm looking to get some more RAM for this, upgrade the iOS, and then I should be able to use this just like I'm using my 3725 for it. I don't have any FXO ports on it. I have a FXS port, but I can still do a couple things with that. Alright, so moving on to the next part of the video. This is basically my setup. I don't think I'm missing anything else to explain. So yeah, that's about it. So let's go to my voice router. So I'm going to open up a command. Right, so if I do a show run, I'm just going to quickly go through what is entered on this router. So let's go to the relevant voice commands. So this is the interface that is connected to the network, 192.168.161. This IP address will also be used as your TFTP server IP address for your IP phones if you enable the telephony service on your router, which will enable CME. If you're not using CUCM, for example, you can just enter telephony service on this router and it's going to enable CME, and configure your phones to use this TFTP IP address, or configure DHCP with option 150 and point it to this IP address for the phones to be able to connect to TFTP. Remember, your IP phones must connect to a TFTP phone in order to register and in order to get a number. So if you don't have any TFTP service running, you're not going to get any. You won't be able to use your IP phones. Alright, so let's continue. You will see these commands, these TFTP server commands. This was left over. Right now this server is not configured, this router is not configured as a CME. It was configured before, and if it's configured as a CME, you need to enter some TFTP server commands if you want to get, for example, phones to load particular firmware. I was trying to upgrade the firmware on my phone. I bought a 7912G phone off eBay, but when I got it, it didn't work, realizing that it didn't have any SCCP firmware on it. In fact, it was using SIP firmware, and also the password was locked. So basically I did some research on the internet and I got something called I had to generate what is called a GK default file using files from Call Manager, and create this GK default file, and which basically contains the upgrade image. So I upgraded the SIP image to this image that you see here using TFTP server. Those instructions were in the GK default CFG file, which is what the phone looked for at boot up. But even though I had entered all this correctly, the phone still did not get the image. So what I ended up doing was putting the actual image on TFTP32 on my computer, and pointed um, the phone to my computer using the DHCP TFTP option, and then it got the firmware and installed successfully. Alright. Oh, I just forgot to mention that in my lab setup, the 7960 also did not support my 7912G phone. So on the ePhone type, it didn't support it. So that's another reason why I'm going to upgrade this to a higher version iOS IP voice. Alright, so let's go through some of the configuration. Now, voice port 200, this is my FXO port. Supervisory disconnect at any tone. This is needed. This is needed. For example, if we have someone calling in from the outside and through the FXO port, and they hang up before the call is answered. If I didn't have this, it would just continue ringing without stopping, because the router doesn't detect any disconnection signal. So this was entered. Also, the OPX is entered. For the same reason. So basically, any call coming in to my FXO port, I want to direct it to my to this extension 1600. In fact, I could have used my analog extension here, or any IP phone extension. I'm even using this is actually a call handler, which is also known as an automated attendant in Cisco Unity. And in that call handler, you basically create caller input options. So if the user enters presses 2, you can create different actions. For example, press 1, you can go to a particular extension. You can press 2, it'll ask you to dial an extension. Press 3, 2 different things to go to another user's extension. So moving on, 201 is another FXO port. 210 and 211, these FXS ports from analog phones. This is not really needed. This is not needed. Music on hold. I think this is needed in order for callers to hear when you put them on hold, or while you're transferring them, you'll hear the music that is specified here. Alright. Another thing to mention as we're on this topic, the CME files, which you will see, they contain 2 versions. You have the basic and you have the full. Not too sure what is the difference in both of them, but the main thing is that you're going to need the CME if you want to have firmware loaded on your machine, on your IP phones. If you have IP phones, you need to get a specific firmware loaded. You need those files, those load files, as they say. Right? For example, this here is a load file. And also it also contains ringtones. It also contains music on hold files. But as I said, those are not necessary for CME. CME is really the telephony service command that is run, which we'll look in a couple minutes. So scrolling down, remember we talked about earlier the dial pair patterns, so that the router will know where to send or where to route a particular call. So based on the digits that is entered, if a digit that is entered 1101, it sees that it's going to route it out my FXS port. 1102 is the extension of another analog phone that's connecting to FXS port, the second FXS port. Alright, so for example, a voice of IP phone calls 1102, the router will see that incoming call, and then it knows where to go to here. Similarly, if I was to enter in my FXO port config connection pillar OPX 1101, it would know that 1101 goes out on this FXS port to that analog phone on that interface. This one here is local calls, or we have a 7-digit calling code in the country, so this is going to match any 7 digits, and once 7 digits is entered, the router then knows to go ahead and send that call out my FXO port. Pretty simple. And moving on, remember we talked about linking your Cisco router to your Cisco Unity server. Your Cisco Unified Communication server. This will do that for you. So for example, we know that any This is a voicemail number, or this is a caller handler or automated attendant number. Once that is entered, if it's incoming at an FXO port or FXS port, the router sees that being dialed, and then it says, okay, well, 1600, I'm going to send that out to this IP address, which is your CUCM server. DTMF really is important. If you don't have this, if a person on the PSTN line or your FXS analog phone tries to enter some number options, for example, from a call handler, press 1, press 2 to transmit the sales, for example, it's not going to get the correct tone. So this basically provides the tone and allows you to enter those options on a touch tone phone, dial tone multi-frequency phone, to get those options to work. Otherwise, as soon as you dial or as soon as you press an option, you're gonna just get transferred to the operator because no signal is sent. So you're gonna need this here as well. So in my CUCM server, all my IP phones are within this range. So 10 ... was going to match any extension in my voice over IP phone list in my CUCM server, and it's going to send it out to that same IP address. This is also another special extension, voicemail extension, that goes out when the router sees it. It's going to send it out to my CUCM server. So that basically does it for that piece. And we're supposed to talk about the telephony service. Let's quickly go ahead. I'm going to just write to this config because I don't want to save the telephony config. Just going to show you quickly. So let's say this setup is going to allow me to call from my FXS and FXS ports to and my FXO port to my voice over IP phones, which are supported in CUCM. Now, if I wanted to have voice over IP phones supported on this router and shut down my CUCM server, I would then go ahead and need to enable CME, Call Manager Express, by running command telephony service. In fact, there's an easier command to run, and this is called it's called telephony service setup. And I'm just going to go through the options here. Yes, it's going to start up Tftp for me. Source IP is going to be the router's interface, IP interface. How many machines I want? Let's say 5. Choose some languages. First extension, let's say this is 4000. And direct inward, no. Now let's see. It creates what is called ePhones and it's going to bring them up. Okay. And if I do a show run, I think then you need to create your CNF files. So I think if you go to telephony service, create CNF file. I don't think you need to do this, but you should do this anytime when you can change in the configuration that involves system load files and so on. So anyway, we have that. So now if we do a show run, let's see what configuration changes were made. Now that it is now a CME telephony service router. Right, so it says 5 phones, 5 extensions, IP address. This is going to be a TFTP IP address. It's going to auto assign those phones. So numbers are going to be auto assigned from 4000, and no multicast, and which just needs to be removed if you're using music on hold. And basically when you register, so if I was to go ahead and register, let's see, I register this phone. VTG Lite is also another IP phone that you can use. So let's go to settings and let's go to 61 for the TFTP server. It's going to reboot and it's going to register its MAC address. This here is a MAC address identifier for itself. It's going to get an IP address from my DHCP server, and you see the registration going on here. Okay, so let's do a show run again. Or I can do show ephone. So show ephone, show ephone. Gives me some information. SCCP protocol 7960 is what the type shows up for VTGeolite, and the number is 4000. So it really is that simple to get your voice over IP phone up and running. And because I have the correct dial patterns as I showed you before, I will be able to communicate. I probably won't be able to communicate because with my voice over IP phone from an analog phone connected, because I don't have any dial pattern for that, but I should be able to call in to my analog phone. So this is the first phone, ephone 1. So let's go ahead and try and see if we can call extension 1101. That should work. Okay, so it works. Alright, I just have some debug running in the background there. I was troubleshooting. Right, so that about does it for the router part. I don't think I missed anything on this configuration here. I don't think anything is missed. We went through all the options. Yep. Oh, if you're setting up telephony service and you want to have the transfer, if you pick up the handset on a IP phone and you press the transfer key and then you try to enter, let's say you had the dial pattern here, assuming you have a dial pattern here for the you don't need the dial pattern for that. If you're calling from one of these phones and you want to transfer, press the transfer button to the FXS phone 1101, it's not going to work. You're going to need to have on a telephony service, you need to enter the following: telephony service transfer pattern, and you can enter like 11xx ... and so the router is going to know that is a transfer. Cool. It's that signal. Listen for that transfer signal. Alright, so that ends it for this part.